So we're going to show you how to look at trees in a nursery and how to pick them out. Chip has some ideas on how to get the best ones. Chip and I will provide some tips on how you plant the trees, and we'll look at some of our favorite. Fall's one of the best times to plant trees. There's several reasons for that. They can root while it's cool, and then go into dormancy as it gets cold, and then be ready to grow in the spring. If you want something with fall color, you can start to see the fall color in the trees in the nursery. Chip is a nursery manager today here at Green Hills. He had that honorary title bestowed upon him. Okay, Chip, you ready to go? Sometimes he rides on these, so I think he's ready. Now let's go take a look in the nursery. We're in November, but we've had pretty warm weather, and our fall season is just starting, and you can see that you have some fall color on a lot of these trees. Right now we're in a row of big box trees. I would call these 36-inch box trees. This one is Oklahoma redbud, which has a little bit of fall color. And to get an idea of price here in Fresno, California, this 36-inch box Oklahoma redbud is about $800. And Oklahoma redbud, you know, we've talked about before this whole bunch of redbuds that stay small, good patio scale tree, doesn't misbehave, and has that fantastic bloom in the spring. And then we've talked about the other redbuds like flamethrower that has a nice color on the leaves in addition to that fantastic bloom in the spring. It's kind of like going to a grocery store and just walking through without knowing what you want. I would prefer that you have a plan. Now, sometimes you'll have a formal plan and then you know exactly what you want and the quantities, or if it's more of where you're just adding one or two of something, at least you have an idea of what those one or two things could be. Maybe a tree has died and you're replacing one tree, and you look online and find two or three that you like, then you need to see if they're available locally. That's one thing you'll run across frequently is now with the internet, you have this tremendous ability to look at all kinds of plants and learn about all kinds of plants. But the ones that are available in your local area aren't always what you end up liking online. There's a number of reasons. One might be that your zone isn't conducive to growing that tree, and so the local nurseries don't carry it. Or sometimes there's plants that will go great in your zone, but nobody knows about them. Because nobody knows about them, nobody buys them, and because nobody buys them, the nursery doesn't carry them. They only want to carry things that they can sell, and so sometimes you'll be a little bit limited. Good nurseries like Green Hills Nursery will try to find it for you. But this availability of plants is really a big issue. A lot of times we'll get a plan drawn by somebody else and it has all kinds of plants on there that are interesting, that would be fun, but they're almost impossible to find. I like to try to combine doing design work with knowing what's available locally and knowing what a nursery like Green Hills can get or has in stocks. We're stuck as soon as we walked in the nursery. One of the best shade trees for our area, in that it's very well behaved. It's a type of Chinese pistache called Keith Davy. The fall color is just starting. You can see at the tip, pretty soon the whole tree will be that color. And by grafting it, you guarantee a certain fall color, guarantee no berries, and guarantee this kind of maintenance-free tree. This is a 48-inch box tree. Retail price is $2,000. As you walk through here, we get an idea of pretty much all the trees that grow in our area. What they've done is have this alley of box trees. If you're at a local nursery, usually most of the plants there grow in your zone. As we walk in the nursery, we have this list that we've made of what we want to buy, and that list is dictated by our conditions that we're going to grow them in. Type of soil and type of maintenance and type of sun exposure and type of cold exposure, and all of those things you've already considered as we walk in here, and then we'll look at possibilities, and sometimes we'll expand our list when we see something spectacular. This Marina Arbutus unito, or strawberry tree, is a very nice tree that does well in Fresno, and it's small. So if you don't want something really big like a Chinese pistache, you have a small lot, you could use like Arbutus Marina, which only gets about 15 or 20 feet tall. Palo Verde tree, you can get them standard or multi. Mostly the ones sold in the nursery are a variety called Desert Museum, which are a little smaller than a full-size Palo Verde. A fruitless olive, a multi-trunk fruitless olive. This is a variety. Oh, no, I was wrong. This is a fruiting olive. Green Hills has a lot of fruitless olives, but that particular one's a fruiting olive identified on the tag. Here's an exception. I said most of them are small trees. This is a Chinese elm, which is a big tree that grows like crazy. So that's kind of a stroll down the first aisle that we came to, which took way too long, but Brendan can edit it. In landscaping, usually you're trying to create a feeling, an immediate feeling, and because we're not real patient, there's a huge preference for the bigger the plant, the better. In terms of the health of the plant, it's really the smaller the plant, the better. Also way less expensive. You saw we were looking at $800 and $2,000 trees, and you can buy the exact same tree for $75 to $100, but in a smaller container. Usually in our area, 15-gallon is the smallest planted, and that's a nice size to use, and the price goes way down. We'll look at some 15-gallon trees here. Usually late in the year, roses are hard to find. Here they still have an excellent selection of tree roses, you can see behind us, and shrub roses right in front of us. And they're all labeled. So this is one where you could do your research, look at your dream roses, the ones you really want, and then come to a nursery and try to find those varieties. Next to the roses, they have a section. It's more like topiary and plants pruned into things, and they're all evergreens. A lot of them are conifers. And
do those count as trees or are those shrubs?
No, I mean, they are plants that could be grown as trees, but they're being grown as a shrub here. You know, they grow some and they'll be a little bigger than they are in the container, but not into a big tree. You're going to keep them about this size. All nurseries in Fresno need to have shade cloth in fairly large sections because a lot of the plants, especially in containers, are more sensitive to sun. You can see as we continue down, we're in 15-gallon trees now, and this is a nice variety of maple called Autumn Fantasy. So this is an $89, $90 tree in a 15-gallon container, and you can see how different that is from the prices we were looking at in the big boxes. Yeah, I would much prefer to plant a tree of this size and then stake it properly and feed it properly. One thing you want to look for is it's nice to buy them with the trunk straight and not wound around the stake. It is true that it's better for trees not to have to stake them. Unfortunately, in a nursery, you have no choice. In order to get them to grow straight, you have to stake them. And it's good to be able to sell a straight tree. Our goal here is as soon as possible to take this stake off and produce a tree that doesn't need a stake tied right to it. You can see the graft here is above the soil level, which is perfect. I can't see any surface roots that are winding around itself. I look and I see some roots coming out the bottom, which as long as they're not big and old looking, those are young and new looking, that's good. I can tell that when I take this out of the container, it's going to hold together. I can mess up the roots a little bit, encouraging it to root out into the native soil. And so this is a really good example of all the things I would look for if I'm buying a tree. This is really a good tree. We would dig a hole that's about twice the size of the container and make sure that we have no hard pan. We would not dig it deep because when we dig it deep, that allows for settling over time. One of the most important things on plants and trees is not to allow them to settle below grade where water can collect around the base of the tree right here. So we want to plant them a little bit high to where this root ball can be a half an inch to an inch high above grade. Some are tempted to dig this hole and then put brand new beautiful soil in there that's completely different than the native soil. I don't recommend that. What that does is create what some people call like the bathtub effect, where that just sits there and roots won't go into it, water won't go out of it. We're trying to get this tree to root into the native soil. And the best way to do that is by using native soil in the backfill and then trying to encourage life in the soil to proliferate. And we make life proliferate by using our combination of optimize, maximize, and nourish-biosol. Usually we'll build a basin around it so that we can water it. When we first plant it, it needs more water than it normally would need during that time of the year. And usually we'll mulch it. Somewhere in there, we will take this stake off. If anyone asks you, what's the most important thing in staking? How do you stake a tree properly? The most important factor is movement. So we want to stake the tree so that it's allowed to move when the wind blows. And if it can move when the wind blows, what ends up happening is the trunk develops tensile strength. And you can tell if a trunk has tensile strength by it gets wider at the bottom and narrower tapers as it goes up. And if you get a lot of width at the bottom, you know you can take those two stakes and your flexible ties off and you have a tree that can stand alone. I guess very similar to raising kids. We want them to stand on their own, but not the kids. It takes more than 2 years. With the tree, we can usually do it in a couple of years. Then we take those stakes off and we have a straight tree that can move in the wind. Dwarf ginkgo tree. Wow, look at that. I didn't know that existed. So I see dwarf ginkgo and I didn't know there was a dwarf ginkgo. So I look it up on my phone probably first and see what it said. And so I try to gather information, in other words, from whatever sources I have available to me. And frequently the help at the nursery is a good source of that. So usually I would combine what I could find out with what they tell me and decide if it would work for my situation. But that's an interesting one. Hi there. Good, how are you? Vicky, right? Diane, I'm sorry. Did I call you Vicky last time I saw you too?
All the time.
Yeah. It's Diane. So this is a Carolina cherry. A lot of times when we plant trees, they're inspected by municipalities like their arborist. And one thing they will look for is rooting like this. This kind of rooting is a problem. So we don't want roots that are growing around the tree. We want the roots to go out. But if I was able to, I'd take that root out. Now, if that was the only one and I really wanted that, I could correct that and plant it in the ground. But if I could find one that didn't have rooting like that, then I would buy one where I don't see that kind of circular surface rooting around the trunk. They've got a great section here full of grapevines and fruit trees and citrus and other types of fruit trees. When you pick out fruit trees, you're looking for the same qualities as other trees, and you're looking at the roots, a little less on the staking, because a lot of fruit trees you keep relatively small so you can pick them, so you're not after big broad spreading trees. As you can see, there's so many varieties, so mainly you're trying to get knowledgeable on what are the best varieties and what you want, and then making sure they look healthy. These all look healthy. You can see the deep green color, that's what you're looking for in citrus. They're not chlorotic and they're showing signs of new growth. That's all good. Hard to find a dogwood. What is this? Let's see. Mountain Moon dogwood, which I'm not familiar with Mountain Moon, but what caught my eye is a dogwood in a 5-gallon, and you can see nice size and it looks really good. Chip and I enjoyed touring Green Hills Nursery. We'd like to thank Green Hills Nursery for their hospitality. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. That will depend on your reaction. If you like it, there's lots of things to talk about here. Every aisle I go down, I see interesting plants, but I kept moving today because we kind of had an idea of just doing an overview of buying trees and planting trees and staking trees. But let us know if you want another nursery tour, and we thank you for watching this one. Let's see if we can find John and Bob's. Probably not. We wanted to see if we could find, oh, look at that. So they have Optimize, you can see in a lot of different sizes. Hi, Lucia. Good, how are you? And my friend Diane, who I thought was Vicky Berry, but we got it now.